welcome to another awesome episode of the Expanded Fandomverse podcast. The Expanded Fandomverse, the only Star Wars podcast about you, the Star Wars fan. Hello, my name is Tim McMahon, and I am joined this week and each and every week by my friend Jason Collier. Hello, Jason.
Hey, Tim, what's been happening with you?
I've had a very busy week, but sadly, none of it was really Star Wars related. I've had a million things to do, and none of it took place in that galaxy far, far away. How about yourself?
Don't you hate weeks like that?
Oh, I know.
I know. It's sad, but we've got a lot of news coming up in the news segment, so hopefully that'll fill in the dead spot of our week.
Yeah, we got that. We got at the end of the episode, Dan White is back to chew the power cable, so stick around for that. And always an interesting time. What's Dan talking about? Do we know yet? Merchandising. That's all I know. It's pretty vague, but if you're into collecting, maybe this will be up your alley. But merchandising. So let's hear what Dan has to say at the end of the episode.
I have a feeling he's going to blister a few people's fannies, as my grandma would say.
In the meantime, you want to tell people, give them a little reminder about Jason's Jawa giveaway?
Yes, 1 week left. 1 week left to go to iTunes and give us a positive review. Hopefully it would be positive. If you even give us a mediocre review, we're really hurting for reviews right now. We just want you to let us know that you're enjoying the show. And the only way you can do that is by sending us an iTunes review. So the giveaway is going to be cool. Not only is it Jason's Jawa giveaway, but it's Tim's Jawa giveaway too, because I'm donating a stuffed Darth Goofy plush, and Tim is donating a bunch of children's Star Wars books.
Yeah, I counted them up. I have 18.
Whoa,
yeah.
Seriously? That is a huge bounty, as Darth Vader would say, or Boba Fett or somebody. That's a pretty cool deal.
There's a couple comic books. There's a pop-up book. There's some early readers. If you got someone in your life who's just learning to read, why not use Star Wars as a tool to teach them to read?
Did you say a pop-up book?
A pop-up book, yes.
And I can't win, right?
No, I'm sorry.
Darn it! I love pop-up books. I still to this day am just enamored by pop-up books. I just call me a kid at heart, but pop-up books, I'm like, oh, like kind of go into a deer in the headlights look when I see a pop-up book, because they're just so darn cool.
They are an art form in and of themselves.
They are. So yes, you can win all that cool stuff if you leave us a iTunes review between now and 12 a.m. on September 21st. So please do that and let us know what you think of the show.
Yeah, if you need any help, if you need instructions on how to leave an iTunes review, because I did hear from some people who say, hey, I'm not that comfortable with iTunes. Well, on our website, theexpandedfandomverse.com, we've included instructions or links to instructions that'll take you through the process step by step.
It was such good. I hate iTunes. They were such good instructions that I actually got to go there. Now, I didn't leave a review because, I obviously can't win the stuff, but it was very easy to maneuver there with Tim's instructions. So thank you for giving us those instructions, Tim.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for listening, listener, and thank you for going to iTunes and doing that. So I think that wraps up the beginning of our show. Jason, you want to jump into the news?
We got a lot to cover. Let's do it.
Okay, news.
Well, the biggest news of the week was the discovery of a new Episode 7 filming location. Pilot Matthew Myatt was flying over Greenham Common, which is a former Royal Air Force base approximately 50 miles west of London. And when he looked down, what did he see? Well, just the Millennium Falcon and an X-Wing fighter. He probably thought he was on Coruscant. He didn't know quite what he was seeing at first, as the Falcon was only half completed. But he snapped some photos, and when he got home, he viewed the photos, and lo and behold, jackpot, there it was. Mr. Myatt's photos spread across the internet like wildfire, and Star Wars fans have since flocked to Greenham Common. The location is not that remote, and since Mr. Myatt's trip, people have sent drones over and discovered a second black X-Wing fighter. Ooh, all the collectors are salivating now. Also, cameramen with telephoto lenses have snapped photos of extras in costumes, set dressings, land speeders, and they even managed to catch second unit filming on video, which is all pretty cool stuff. And I've actually watched it. Now, Tim, you've tried to stay away from the spoilers and the rumors, but you have to have seen the photos. What are your thoughts?
I have. I said before, I will look at photos. These are pretty cool. I think it's pretty awesome. The Black X-Wing, we've talked about the Expanded Universe fans out there previously, but I know a lot of them are kind of excited about this because Black X-Wings were a thing. They were called Stealth X-Wings in the Expanded Universe, so the filmmakers did say they were going to mine the EU for ideas, so maybe we'll see stealth X-Wings in these new films. I like what I saw, even though it was blurry and from a distance. I can't wait to see the real thing on film.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to the or watching the video where you can actually hear them yelling background and action, and and then you see some kind of people walking around, and then you hear cut, and then I was waiting for like somebody to say like, all right, Mr. Hamill, move to the left, or Mr. Ford, action.
They did mention John Boyega by name.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
in that video.
In one of the videos, the one I saw. Yeah, I'll send you a link. We'll post the link on our site.
I probably wasn't listening for John. Do that.
Yeah. No, they mentioned his last name too, which I thought was weird. So I was like, and John, go, John Boyega now. Good job, John. Something like that. Yeah.
Oh, well, there's two. Are there two videos?
I've just seen the one.
Okay. Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's more than one video. I didn't hear that. Maybe I was just so excited. I was probably focused so in on the action and what was going on that I didn't hear that part. But that's exciting stuff. It looks really cool. One of the things that I did read was that people are trying to figure out what location it is, or what planet. A lot of speculation, but they said that it did resemble, from the Knights of the Old Republic, a area of Dantooine. So that's not really spoilers because that's from the Expanded Universe and stuff. Right. And Dantooine may be a totally different place now because of the different Expanded Universe. But I just thought I'd kind of add that in. So maybe it's the remnants of a long deserted rebel base on Dantooine that we're finally getting to see.
Yeah, that would be an awesome tie-in to episode 4.
That would.
Right. Well, that wasn't the only video going around this week. I love a good viral video. And when you have a Star Wars theme video, it's all the better. This week, people were talking about a short film called Star Wars minus Williams. It's similar to Garfield minus Garfield, the comic strip where they remove Garfield the cat from the strip. It changes everything when you take Garfield out of the strip. So the premise of this film is, what would Star Wars be like without one of the main elements of the film, in this case the classic score of John Williams. So the filmmakers, a team called the Aeronauts, took the ending of Episode 4, New Hope, when our heroes are walking into the temple to receive their medals from Princess Leia. That scene, we all know, is about 95% music. So what happens when you remove the music? Well, they added ambient background noise, and what you get is actually very funny, kind of unnerving. You got to see it to understand it. It's hilarious. They add a little bit of humor. When Chewie roars, they've changed the roar to something else. It's kind of funny. Now, the oral? Oh, man. These names.
Ariel?
Aeronauts? Okay, we'll go with that. They have done some other Star Wars related work on their YouTube page, and it had me laughing pretty darn hard. We'll provide links in our show notes. Go check them out. Maybe we'll have them on the show in the future. But again, their video of Star Wars minus Williams was getting a lot of play this week. Jason, what's the funniest Star Wars video you think you've ever seen?
Well, I tell you, the Ariel Nuts video was pretty funny. I watched it, and using the word unnerving was a very good definition, because you're sitting there and what I love is hearing kind of like coughing, like one of the guys dressed up in the X-Wing fighter uniforms is sitting there coughing, and you can get and hear just people shuffling around a little bit, and you're like, somebody say something or do something. It's just it's really pretty funny. But the video that I'm loving right now is everybody loves Admiral Akbar. and he's got a funny video that's on YouTube right now called, of course, "It's a Trap." And what he does is he's sitting on the bridge of his ship, and instead of looking out of a window at Starfield, he's kind of looking at a movie projector, and he's seeing different movies being played. And of course, during those particular movies, well, they're parts of movies where, something happens, it's a trap. And so he's sitting there kind of looking at him, and with that kind of, you can tell something's, you can tell Admiral Akbar's kind of thinking, and then he turns around and he says, "It's a trap." And then it cuts to the movie. And of course, it's like the scene from The Thing where it eats the guy's arms, and the scene from The Godfather where Michael Corleone gets mowed down by a hail of bullets and stuff. And there's several other films, but it's just, I don't know, it's the same thing over and over again. And it's the same piece of video where he spins around and says it's a trap. But I don't know, it's hilarious. I watched it alone by myself one day, and just kept on watching it over and over again because it was just so darn funny.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's really funny. I'll post we'll post that one up on with the Ariel nuts. So what's your favorite one?
Oh, wow. The Ariel nuts, their take on the prequels. They have 3 videos. That's episode 1, 2, and 3. Edited down to about 15 minutes, and they change what the characters are saying. I don't know if it's the funniest thing I've ever seen, but it's the funniest thing I've seen this week, even beyond their Star Wars minus Williams. They changed the characters so that Jedi are not these monk warriors protecting the universe. They're more like frat boys who are causing trouble. Palpatine is not an emperor, but he's a businessman who owns all these businesses, and the Jedi show up and screw up his business. Like, he has a restaurant and they chew and screw and and then the Jedi, when they fight, they don't fight, they dance fight. They lay down a dance track, and these guys are using their lightsabers, but they edit it so it looks like they're dancing more than sword fighting. It had me going for a long time this week, so that's number 1 on my list right now. But ask me next week, it'll probably change.
Yeah, it does change for me too. And in thinking about it, the "It's a Trap" one is kind of like my personal favorite at the moment. But going back, I'd say the one I've spent most time watching is the Red Letter Media, who does the reviews of all the different genre movies and stuff. And he's got to start doing Phantom Menace, and it's about as long as Phantom Menace, and and the guy is hilarious. It's hilarious stuff, and I mean, just die watching it. So check that out too. It's Red Letter Media. Well, it's good to have friends in high places, and if you're familiar with the work of J.J. Abrams, then you probably know the face of Greg Grunberg. Greg is an actor, but he's also been friends with J.J. Abrams since they were in kindergarten together. Much of the same way Alfred Hitchcock would put himself in his own films, J.J. has put Greg in nearly all of his films. So fans have been wondering whether or not Greg would end up a part in Episode 7. Well, this week, Greg confirmed via Twitter that yes, quote unquote, it is safe to assume that I have a role in Star Wars Episode 7. And then he continued to say in his tweet, if I say more than that, JJ will have me killed. So, Tim, do you have or have you ever had friends in high places and that have managed to slip you a little extra something thanks to their jobs?
To keep it movie related, I had a friend who was a manager at a theater, and of course, every Sunday night, it's a pretty slow time at the theater. He'd let us come in and watch whatever we want for free, so that was always cool. And sometimes they would do sneak previews of films for employees, so we would see things a week before they were out. That's about it. No one's ever given me a role in a Star Wars film, so.
Well, me either. I guess that kind of the story of Greg, makes you think, who was I mean to in kindergarten that is right. That is now like, a big Hollywood film producer or director. And so you have to be careful who you're mean to and who you're nice to, or it might bite you in the butt later on in life.
Definitely. And speaking of Hollywood and being mean to each other, well, actually, this isn't being mean, but the Star Wars Episode 7 and Superman versus Batman Twitter war continues.
It's a nice war.
Yeah, it's a war of funniness. This week, Zack Snyder tweeted a new picture This time, it's of Gotham City Police arresting a stormtrooper and putting the hapless TK into a police cruiser, which just happens to be parked right next to the brand new Batmobile. The 501st Legion confirmed via Facebook that one of their own, TK-412 of the Midwest Garrison, is the stormtrooper in the picture. So, good for you, TK-412. Now, I have no doubts that Batman could take down a stormtrooper by himself. That would be easy. Batman could probably take down a whole garrison of stormtroopers. But Jason, do you think Batman could defeat Darth Vader?
No.
No?
Well, no.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
There's one word, the Force. I'm
Force.
sorry, the Batman just doesn't have the Force.
So. Now, Batman has defeated Superman more than once. Do you think Superman could defeat Darth Vader?
But Superman's a wuss, man. Superman's got a heart. Well, and I guess you can say Darth Vader had a heart too, because he finally turned him to good. So.
Right.
I don't know. There is an interesting. We were talking about YouTube videos, and there are a group of videos on YouTube called Superpower Beatdown, where they put, one particular either superhero or genre star versus another, and ones that would never meet in film, and put them together. Like they have a Thor versus Superman, and they have the Predator versus Wolverine, and the Star Wars twist is Darth Vader versus Gandalf. And I'm not going to say who won, but you can check it out at YouTube and just look up Superpower Beatdown. Pretty interesting stuff.
Now, I know there's long been the debate online and in the nerd community is could a lightsaber harm Superman? And I think the conclusion that people have come to is no, unless the lightsaber is powered by a kryptonite crystal.
A kryptonite crystal.
I mean, yeah, kryptonite is a crystal. Lightsabers use crystals. Put the two and two together, there you go.
That would, yeah. So I guess was Luke Skywalker's lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, since it was green, was that a kryptonite lightsaber?
Could be.
Only the fan fiction will let us know.
Right. And if you want to get really hardcore nerdy, there are kryptonites of many different colors, including red.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, wouldn't like red kryptonite turn him evil or something?
Maybe.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, well,
back to Star Wars.
Yeah, and speaking of Star Wars fans, which is what our podcast is all about, the fans. There's always kind of a war between Star Wars and Star Trek fans. Who's the most crazy fans? It's basically they're the two most iconic, essential science fiction franchises in history. So who's got the bigger fans? There's still a bit of a rift between the two factions. Some stick with the Klingons and Ferengis, while others are all about the Wookiees and the Stormtroopers. But there's a rivalry there. So, which is the strongest fandom? Oh, the people at Movoto Real Estate may be in the business of selling houses, but they're, I guess, really into sci-fi too. And so initially they wanted to see which states like Star Wars more and which states like Star Trek more. So they turned to everyone's favorite social media site, Facebook, and checked what percentage of states' population, quote unquote, liked each of the major franchises. Well, unfortunately for the Trekkers, or Trekkies, however they want to be called, it became pretty obvious that Star Wars reigned supreme, winning out in every single state, most of the time by a 3-to-1 ratio. Wow. So, yes, yay Star Wars fans. Woohoo. It's interesting to look at a little closer at a couple of the top 10 states. Now, it seems that Alaska is the number one state for Star Wars fans. It says Alaska. Maybe it's because it looks like Hoth. I don't know. Maybe it's because you have the best view of the stars. But no, for whatever reason, both Star Wars and Star Trek rated really high in Alaska, ranking first in Star Wars fans. Almost 4.8% of people here liked the original trilogy and were willing to brag about it on Facebook. And Star Trek fans showed that they were there too, ranking second in the category. And in all, 6.87% of people in Alaska liked one or both of these fine franchises. Now, number 2 was Washington State. So we're kind of seeing kind of a northwest thing happening here. And I guess you could kind of tell, Washington's got a lot of cons.
It's a big technology sector there. It's the home of Microsoft, and everyone thinks of Silicon Valley, but I know Washington has a huge tech community there. So tech guys tend to be nerdy guys.
Right. And it's also very rainy and dreary up there. And what's there to do when it's rainy and dreary? Stay inside and watch TV. Now, and watch movies. So now, Tim, you're from Maine. Is that correct?
I live here currently. We say in Maine, unless you're born in Maine, then you're from away. So I'm from away, but I live here now.
Okay. And Maine is called the Pine Tree State, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
All right. Well, you may want to consider changing its name to the Sci-Fi State, because Maine ranked number 8 in the top 10 states for sci-fi lovers.
Wow.
Yeah, and for a good reason, considering that 5.42% of its population liked either Trek or Star Wars. Tim, you might be in a state that you might be a little outnumbered, because actually Star Trek fans were higher in Maine than Star Wars fans.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. But there's still plenty of Star Wars fans, saying that over 3.7% of people in the States are willing to brag that they love their lightsabers. So, and I didn't even see my state, Alabama, on the list. So it's way far down, because down here in the South, we have good looking women. And that's why they're less Star Wars nerds, I guess, down here.
I'll have to share this. I have a good friend, Sarah, and her husband, Ben, and I are both Star Wars fans, but she is the Trek fan, and she will intentionally drop Trek references into conversation when we're talking about Star Wars. We're like, oh yeah, remember when the Millennium Falcon went to warp speed to get to Kessel, and stuff like that. And we're like, wow, no, you got it all wrong. And she does it intentionally, and it's good fun. So there you go, Sarah. Congratulations. But enough about us. Last thing in the news is Rebels news. More Rebels news. Rebels, the new TV show, is less than a month away. I'm counting down until then. I'm looking forward to it. But the news about Rebels has a touch of Episode 7 blended in. With the death of the old EU, the Lucasfilm Story Group has been saying that from this point forth, all Star Wars content will have a greater cohesion, that things are being planned out years in advance, and a big picture for the Star Wars story is being painted. Just how strong is this new cooperation? Well, it has been rumored that elements of the sequel film will appear in Rebels and vice versa, but that's been rumors. Well, this week, Entertainment Weekly has come out with a quote. They have a source close to Star Wars, and they say that this is what they wrote. Attention Star Wars fans, if you want to see new ships, locations, characters, and weapons that'll be in Episode 7, well, some of them might make their debut appearance early as this fall. The team behind Disney's other announced Star Wars film story, the one that's being released next month, Star Wars Rebels, which premieres on Disney Channel before moving to Disney XD, is in creative cahoots with the Episode 7 team. So that's what Entertainment Weekly learned. They go on to say that we'll be seeing some crossover here and there. When I read this at first, I was like, oh, cool. And then I reread it and read it word by word, and they said, we might be seeing things. So that kind of stuck in my craw. What do you think about all this, Jason?
Well, we kind of touched on this a few weeks ago when the rumor was out about the Inquisitor, and
yes, the
Inquisitors might have a role in Episode 7. So I like the idea that they're tying it in. That's going to make me want to watch Rebels. I was a little cold on Rebels initially until I found out that they were going to drop little nuggets into Rebels that will maybe pay off in Episode 7. And that's, really the model that they're using with Marvel. Having the S.H.I.E.L.D. series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., having the different movies and having these little things that will tie them all together really makes for great cohesive storytelling. And whereas I may have not wanted to watch Rebels before. Now that I know that it's going to really connect with something I'm excited about, Episode 7, then I'm going to try to watch it. But I can't because I don't have Disney XD. But I will. I'll find a way. Don't worry.
There's always a way.
There's always a way.
There is no try. There is only do, or something. Some little guy I heard once say something like that. I can't remember his name.
Backwards or forwards, something like that.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up news for this week.
Oh my. I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. No, please don't get off. No!
All right, coming up next is the interview that Tim and I did with Mark Dermul, who is the guy behind the Save the Lars Homestead project.
Good work, Commander.
Mark Dermul had been to Tunisia many times, guiding fans to the filming locations of the desert planet Tatooine in the Star Wars saga. During his trip in 2010, he and a group of fans were flabbergasted with the poor state of one particular and very iconic location, the Lars Homestead. It had almost been destroyed by the climate of the Tunisian desert. Afterwards, some of the tourists and Mark started joking about one day returning and restoring the Lars Homestead and restoring it to its full movie look-alike glory. What started as an off-the-cuff remark soon turned into a solid idea and an unbelievable fan journey to repair one of the most iconic sets in movie history.
Mark, it's an incredible story, and I can't wait to hear more about how you guys accomplished this great feat. But before you do, before we talk about that, each week we like to ask our guests their Star Wars origin story. Tell us how you were first introduced to Star Wars and that galaxy far, far away.
Well, that story may not be as exciting as you guys are expecting, but my dad was taking me and my 1 year older brother to the cinema. And I was very anxious to go and see Bambi again, but my dad and my older brother, they wanted to see this new movie, Star Wars. I'd never heard of it. And they dragged me along, and tears sprung into my eyes because I wanted to see this Disney flick about that deer. But they took me to Star Wars, but as soon as the movie opened, as for many fans, they will remember the opening sequence with that big Star Destroyer filling the silver screen. Well, I was captivated from that very first shot, and, well, the rest is history.
I think we all had very similar type reactions
to
Star Wars, except now, did you ever see Bambi? Did you ever get back to see it?
Well, we saw it before, and I was hoping we were going back, but we were going to Star Wars. But I have to say, my dad and my brother, they liked Star Wars, as most people do when they first see it, but not like me. I went back the whole summer. I used to spend complete days in the cinema. It was a time when you bought one ticket, at least in Belgium, that's how it was. You bought one ticket for the first screening, and you could sit in the theater all day long. So I would go out there with my lunchbox and some drinks, and I would sit there from noon until 10 p.m., watching it 5 times a day for 2 weeks in a row.
Oh, wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, so I think you could call it a bit of a Star Wars addiction.
Yes.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to your experience in Tunisia. Now, tell us initially what brought you to Tunisia, your first trip there, and how did you get started taking people on trips to Tunisia?
Well, the first trip I took was with a group of not fans, but just a group of people going out to Tunisia to see the landscape, just like tourists. And I was like, this might be an interesting trip because the tour was going around to quite a few places that were linked to Star Wars. And I was even able to convince the tour guide to make some diversions to see the Matmata, Sid Idris Hotel, the Star Wars Canyon and stuff like that. And that was my first trip, and I experienced this for myself for the very first time. And when I came back, I launched this website with pictures saying, this is where I went, and these were the Star Wars locations that I saw, and it is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful country to visit. And before I knew what happened, people started contacting me and saying, ooh, we want to do this too. How about you going along and guiding us around? And that's basically how it got started. And since then, I've been going back there every 2-3 years with Star Wars fans from all over the world. People as far from Australia come over for this 8-day tour, and then they see all these Star Wars locations.
What was the experience like for you as a fan standing in some of these iconic locations that you've experienced so many times watching in the cinema as a young child? I guess probably particularly the one that I think most people would probably have an experience is standing there by the Lars Homestead, the iconic shot of Luke Skywalker, and I'm sure you've stood in that exact same place. What's it like to be in that location, knowing that you're exactly where Luke Skywalker was?
Well, that certainly is a goosebump moment, and it literally brought tears to my eyes. And when you bring your iPod and then you play the John Williams soundtrack, it really is kind of, you have this. I've been watching Star Wars on the silver screen and on my television for 20 years before I actually went out there for the very first time. So I really had to put my mind to the fact that I was standing on Earth in Tunisia and not in that galaxy far, far away, because it really felt like I was standing on Tatooine, because this was Tatooine for 20 years in my mind's eye, because I'd only experienced it through the film. But then you go out there and you see this beautiful locations, and it really is a goosebump moment. Now, of course, the locations that are really recognizable from the film, they give you goosebumps. But I have to be honest, one of my favorite places was the Star Wars Canyon, where R2-D2 is captured by the Jawas, or where Luke Skywalker is attacked by the Tusken Raiders. That canyon, which was also used in Raiders of the Lost Ark, is such a tremendous, beautiful place. Even if you're not a Star Wars fan, but just a fan of just someone who appreciates beautiful nature, the Star Wars Canyon is the place to be. I have to tell you, every time I go out there, I can spend a whole afternoon in that canyon, at the other places as well, of course. But the only place that really got tears to my eyes was actually the Lars Homestead. That is such a desolate place. There's really nothing around there. You can see for miles around, and it's just sandy flatlands, It's really eerie. It's really alien, and obviously that's why Lucasfilm chose to film there. But when you're standing there, it really feels like you're standing in the Star Wars universe, and that's for a fan, that's quite gratifying and an amazing experience.
Now, I love it when fans can take their passion about anything and then turn it into a calling. Now, you have become the quote-unquote go-to guy for tours of filming locations in Tunisia, especially through the early 2000s. If I can step back a moment, when was your first trip to Tunisia?
That must have been 2002, I think, 2001 maybe.
So over the next decade, you were the guy that people connected with when they wanted to go. What's it like? You've expressed your own emotions about seeing these locations, but what's it like sharing these locations and the joy and the emotions with others? Any good stories of other fans that you've brought?
Yeah, certainly. Again, the Star Wars Canyon. When you walk into the canyon, you have to go around this huge rock before you see the exact location where R2-D2 is captured by the Jawas. We call it the Jawa Rock. It's so recognizable. What I do is I go into the canyon first, and I keep the fans, my friends, I keep them behind the boulder so I can actually go and stand by the Jawa Rock and then invite them in, so to speak, to watch their faces. And every one of them has the same expression on their face as I had the first time. And that is really gratifying. It's so nice to see jaws dropping, all the oohs and the ahs, and then the click, 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 click from the cameras. It's really amazing. And the funny thing is, which is really nice to experience, is the fact that even though these people have not met before, only through email, making arrangements to get together for this trip, and then finally meeting in Brussels before we fly out to Tunisia, that's when they meet for the very first time. But once they're out there, and they're at this one location, the first one, the second one, the third one, whatever, immediately they are a family. There is this common language. Even though some of them don't understand each other, they have this common language, and that common language is Star Wars. Their love for Star Wars, and immediately they become friends for life. And that, for me, is one of the how should I put this? It's one of the most gratifying things that I take back with me after a trip like that.
Now, in 2007, you published the travel guide aptly titled Trip to Tatooine, and it providing information for future pioneers to undertake their own expedition if they wanted to. Tell us why you decided to put all this into a book, and how has the book been received?
Well, I decided to put this into a book because by that time I had children of my own. I'd been there 3-4 times already, and I was like, I'm not going to be doing this every 2 years. I'm moving on with my life as well. I want to go visit other locations. I've been to Finse, where they shot The Empire Strikes Back. I've been to Italy, Lake Como, where they shot episode 2 and stuff like that. So I didn't want the fans who really wanted to go and see it to have to depend on me. I wanted the people to be able to go out there by themselves. Just get the book, get every detail into that book, so that people can simply buy the book and have me there, but in book form, in pages. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. And another one is because I wanted to share it with the people who are already there. And I have to say, the book has been very well received. I get comments, weekly, from people who buy the book before going out there, and those same people come back afterwards to thank me profusely for writing the book, because without the book they might not have found all the locations. Because you have to realize that the Tunisian tourism office, they are not really aware of this Star Wars fandom. They're getting more and more aware now. In the last decade, they've become more aware. But when I first went out there for the first 2 trips in the early 2000s, you could not find a guide who would be able to bring you to these locations because they simply were not aware of them. So the book was really, it was necessary for fans to find these locations.
Now, in finding all these different locations, what was the hardest location to find? Because you said there a lot of people didn't even know much about Star Wars in the area. What was the hardest location maybe to track down and to verify?
That's a hard one, because most of these locations were already known. What I mean is that David West Reynolds, I believe his name is.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. He wrote an article for the Star Wars Insider, also in the early 2000s. So all the locations were already known, but not exactly the GPS coordinates. Let me put it that way. There were general descriptions. Tracking down the toughest location, I'm not sure. Maybe it was the igloo, the Lars Homestead, because it's in an expanse of flatlands. But now you can see it quite easily, because after the restoration we painted it white, and now you can see it from Nefta, from 7 miles away. But before that, it just blended into the landscape. So I guess you could say that was the toughest one to find.
I wish you had written the book 10 years earlier, because I had the chance to go to Tunisia in 1994, but honestly, we couldn't find information, so we didn't make the trip, fearing that we'd get lost in the Dune Sea and end up baking in the hot sun to death.
And there wouldn't have been a Lars Homestead to find, because the structure was gone. The structure that you see now was actually rebuilt in 2000 for the prequels. Oh. So if you'd gone out there in 1994, all you would have found was the man-made craters, but the building was gone.
I did not realize that that's a reconstruction. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now were those man-made craters actually made for the 1977 A New Hope?
Yes.
And they remained there for that many years?
Yes. Because you have to realize that part of the country is it doesn't rain very often, and the sand is hard packed. So even though the crater filled up a bit, it was still you could still recognize it very easily. When I was out there for the first time after the prequels were shot, I could even see the indentations in the sand from where the gravestones were, where Anakin prays in front of when he lays to rest his mother Shmi. You could actually still see the indentations in the sand where the gravestones had been. Those are now long gone, of course, but the craters are still quite easily found.
Impressive. So to go back to your trip in 2010, when you discovered the poor condition of the homestead, it was really falling apart. Tell us more about what happened to the set, and how you guys got inspired to launch the project. Okay.
Well, it was my third or even my fourth trip with fans, and every time I take them out there, of course, because that's one of the most iconic sets. And even though everyone who went there was very excited about it, I was kind of sad, because as years progressed, I saw the igloo becoming, more and more of a ruin. Chipping off, things were falling apart. You could see the chicken wire coming through, the plasterwork was coming off, the wood on the inside was rotting, and stuff like that. So I was really saddened by the site. By 2010, it was more a ruin than a recognizable set. And we were talking about that, and afterwards we went back to the hotel, and we were sitting in the bar or the cantina, as we call it, drinking some boga, which is, I think George Lucas got the name for his lizard from Revenge of the Sith, from the boga, which is a local lemonade in Tunisia. Anyway, we're sipping boga because there's no alcoholic drinks in an Arabic country. We're sipping boga, and one of the guys is joking about, we should come back here with a bag of plaster and a pot of paint and restore the damn thing. And I was like, at that time, I was like, no, too soon, guys, too soon. I mean, come on, we're still here. This is never going to happen. And I wasn't really sure that this was something we could accomplish. But we come back home, and one of the guys from the group from the last trip, he launches this idea on Facebook and says, what would you guys think if we were to go back there and restore this location? And the response was overwhelming. People were like, yeah, come on, where do we give you money? How do we go about this? So they thought they'd launch it as a joke to see how people felt about it. But people started responding, and it started escalating. And before they realized it, they were actually expected to go and do this. So they come back to me, and they're like, Mark, we're in a bit of a tight spot here. People are now actually expecting us to go out there and restore this structure from Star Wars. We're going to need your help. And I was like, need my help? Why? You know where the place is. Just take a plane out there and go and do it. But of course, they turned to me because I know the people there. I know the local customs. I speak the language. So I guess it was a logical choice. And I had to think about it for maybe 2.6 nanoseconds before I agreed to lead this troop. And so we took it from there, and we started talking with the Tunisian government, because it's all good and well to say, we'll go out there, we'll replaster it, and we'll repaint it. But that's easier said than done. Not only the climate, but also the political situation in Tunisia. Not to mention the fact that you cannot go out there and do some construction without work permits and stuff like that. And moreover, the building, even though it was put there by Lucasfilm, is actually owned by the Tunisian government. So there were all this red tape that we had to work through before we could actually lift a finger to restore the building. So that was a bit something we had underestimated. Let me put it mildly. We underestimated that. But we started negotiating with the Tunisian government. It was slow going, because then in December 2010 there was the what we call the Arab Spring. There was all this unrest and riots, and then there were governments being toppled and all that. And it took until the better part of a year before a new government in Tunisia was installed, and before we could relaunch our request. Once it was relaunched, once the new government was installed, everything went very quickly. We quickly got the green light, let me put it that way. They told us we could actually go out there. They did have some provisions. One of the things we had to do was buy all the building material locally. We had to hire at least 3 local builders to help. So they had all these provisions built in to help restore their economy, But we were fine with that, because we knew we were going to need their help, because we may have some inkling of how to plaster a shed back home in a European climate, but the Tunisian climate is quite different. I know you guys work in Fahrenheit, and I'm not sure how this calculates to Celsius, but the temperature was around 40 degrees Celsius, and we even worked in 50 degrees Celsius temperatures. That's in the hundreds, or just over 100 in Fahrenheit, I believe. So it was very hot, and we didn't know how that would impact our material, our plaster. You have to realize we were out there in the desert, so everything has to be done by hand. So we had to make the plaster in a wheelbarrow. We had to take a wheelbarrow there. We had to take the plaster there, the cement. We had to take water there in barrels, and then mix our cement by hand. But we didn't get the composition right, and the cement started to harden in the wheelbarrow before it was properly mixed. So we had to start over and over again. So we were very happy to have these local builders to help us out and tell us less cement, more water, and then help us to do this.
Tell us about the money that you had to raise to get this accomplished, and what means did you raise the money, and how much more money did you raise than you needed?
Okay. Well, we started calculating. We knew that we only had about a week to get this done, and we would fly out with 4 people. We ended up flying out with 6, but those 2 extras paid their own flight. But that's besides the point. So we were calculating, and we would need lodgings, flights, and stuff like that. And then, of course, we'd also need to buy the material back there. All in all, when we were done calculating, and we didn't sleep in a 5-star hotel. We slept in a very, very low budget bed and breakfast with 3 people in a room. So we wanted to spend the money correctly. We calculated that we would need about $10,000. What we did was we launched a website in which people were able to donate between $2 and $100, and that would give them the sort of like a badge, like if you were to donate $100, you would be a Jedi Master, stuff like that. So people were donating money as little as $2, as much as $100. There was even one person who donated $600. So there was people who donated $400 saying, I want to take my grandchildren there. So people were really anxious to see us get this project off the ground. And in less than half a year, we raised about $11,000, and then we had to tell people, stop donating. We have the money that we need. Now we have to go and fly out there and do this. We were able to fix the Lars Homestead in time, in that week, and under budget. We still had about $2,600 left after restoring the homestead. Money that we still have because we want to put it into some other projects in Tunisia as well in the near future. During my last trip in April of this year, I wanted to donate it to a local school that is very close to the Lars homestead, but the government wouldn't allow it. So we have to fix something else with the money that we have left. But we do want to donate it to the Tunisian people because they are very poor and they are very much in need of our help. And since the money was raised for the Lars Homestead and Lars Homestead is finished, we felt it was only right to be spending that money to a school or a local charity in Tunisia. But like I said, we raised the $10,000 in about 6-7 months maybe. So people were really eager to see us go do this project.
That's wonderful. I love the idea of giving back to the community. That's great. In May of 2012, you headed out to make the needed repairs. Your online diary gives great details, lots of pictures, all about the process. But if you can you summarize it up, everything you had to do at the homestead, the particular challenges of working in the desert, not just the heat, but you mentioned getting the cement mixture right. What other kind of challenges did you have in the desert? Well,
first of all, we had to tear down most of the igloo because the plaster, the foundation, it was really rotten. It was not salvageable. So first we had to make her look worse before we could make her better, and that was kind of heartbreaking. But on the other hand, it did enable us to bring back some of the pieces because people who donated $100 or more, we promised them a piece of the igloo. So we were able to salvage some parts, then break them up, package them, and send them to the people who donated. But we had to break down the igloo first before we could restore her, and then we reinforced it. So we made it better than the original that was left by Lucasfilm. That's no slight, but they simply built it for 3 months of filming, and then they didn't need it to be there any longer. We wanted to make sure that it was there for decades for fans, for future generations of fans to go and visit. So we reinforced the base. We gave it a new plywood base, and we cemented that base. Put on some chicken wire as well, so that the plaster would stick on it a lot better and stay on it as well. We used about 1,000 nails and about 1,000 screws. 40 kilos of plaster and cement we used. We also gave it a special layer of something. I don't know what it's called in English, but it is you paint it on. It's not paint. It's a bit of like a glue that staves off water. Because if it rains in Tunisia, in those flatlands, the water takes a long time to seep into the soil. So the plaster would suck it up. So we would give it this extra layer that could stave off the water. The final part we had to do is paint it. And now, this is not a tall building. This is not a big building. And we thought we would need only like 40 kilos of paint to do the whole thing. We ended up using about 7 times that. It dried up so fast, it was amazing. We had to keep bringing in paint. It was quite amazing. But the challenges were mostly heat related. We got up at 5 a.m. We called it silly o'clock. We got up at 5 a.m. The breakfast wasn't being served yet, so all we could do was go around the corner where we found a small cafe that already served some coffee at 5 o'clock. Then we drove out there, and by 6 o'clock we would be working. And around noon, we would be, very close to a heat stroke, so we had to get back out of there. So we drove back to the hotel around noon, only to go back out there around 5 p.m., and from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m., 9 p.m., we could continue work until the sun went down. The biggest challenge was the heat, but aside from that, it was also the fact that we had no electricity. So everything had to be done by hand. It's quite a challenge, let me tell you, to mix cement, to mix paint, to all the screws that had to be driven in, all the nails that had to be driven in, all the cutting of the wood and stuff like that, all the sawing of the planks and stuff like that. Everything had to be done by hand because we had obviously no electricity whatsoever. So that was a challenge as well. And another challenge was the fact that we only had 4 days to complete the challenge. There was just 4 days to complete the restoration. We didn't have any more time, so we were only there for a week, and we were able to start on the Monday, and we had to finish by the Thursday. So we only had 4 days, which meant on the final day we really worked through quite a few hours, even the hours in the heat. We simply didn't have enough time to go back and rest and get out of the sun. We had to finish this. So we even lost one guy. Well, lost is a big word. Sorry, that sounds worse than it is. But Terry had to go back to the hotel with a sunstroke. So he couldn't work for the third day because he'd been in the heat too long. He was dehydrated. You would not believe how much water we drank. It's quite amazing how much you drink when you're working in the desert. And, I've been there quite a few times already, and I'm quite used to the heat, and I know how much I have to drink. But when you're working, even though it may look like it's not hard work, it is hard work. And if you're working in those temperatures, 50 degrees Celsius, you are dehydrating faster than you can take on water.
I guess you kind of could commiserate with the actors, and especially those who were in costume and makeup during the filming of the prequels and the original film, with how difficult it was working those long days in the desert.
Absolutely. Whenever you hear them tell that story at a convention, there's always people sitting around you rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, the heat." But you have to have been out there to experience it yourself, and then you realize, my God, they're absolutely right. They're not just moaning, or they're not just telling this because they don't have anything else interesting to say. No, this is really what they remember. This is probably one of the first, when they asked them about how was filming in Tunisia, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. I had to drink all day long. The heat was simply unbearable. I can relate to that.
Now, the finished Lars Homestead looks great, but a little different. Now, why did you guys paint it white instead of the brown?
We get that question all the time. And when you look at the pictures now, pictures that we're taking this year, because people are visiting it now, you will see that it actually looks a beige as it does in the film. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted it painted white so that the weather could do the weathering. We really wanted it to be weathered by the climate and not use that colored paint, because all the buildings in Tunisia are originally painted white. So, yeah, because that staves off the sun. Obviously, that reflects the sun and keeps away the heat. And we knew that in 6 months to 12 months, the igloo would look exactly as it does in the movie, because it will be weathered by the climate, by the sandstorms and stuff like that. And the most recent pictures already show that it now looks as it did in the movie, and it's only been 2 years. We were kind of afraid if we were to paint it beige to make it look like it looked in the movie immediately, that by now it would be too dark already.
Good point. Now, as listeners of the show know, I'm a big Star Wars book fan. I collect books, and I'm excited. I've ordered your book. It's on the way. Your book documents the whole story of saving the homestead. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more how it came to pass? How the writing of the book, were you alone? Did you do it yourself? And tell them how they can get a copy as well.
Okay. Well, I did write the text. I had it read by the other pioneers as well, of course. I call them pioneers or saviors, whatever, the guys who went with me. What we did was every day when we went back to the hotel between shifts, let me put it that way, the morning shift and the night shift, we went back because it was too hot. I would write down stuff in my diary. And when we got back home, one of the guys who was with us was Michel Verpoorten, who is a documentary maker and he's a photographer. We took him along especially to create that book. So we went out there and we knew this is one of the things we really want to document for posterity. So we took him along to make sure that we had all the pictures that we needed. And he works for a company that does layouts of flyers and books and stuff. So he created the book. I just wrote the text. He took the pictures. We worked together to select the photographs that we wanted in the book. And you will find that the book there is text in there to describe what happened every day, but the text is really limited to 1 or 2 pages per day, and all the rest is pictures, because an image says 1,000 words. We wrote it in about, I think we were back for 2 months when the text was finished, and every pioneer had reread it and was happy with it. We made some changes, as you often do, but within 2 minutes of returning from that event, the book was basically ready. All we had to do was select pictures and then get it off to the printers. People can simply visit savelars.com, which is our website, where they can also find the diary and all the pictures. And there they have a link that will send them to lulu.com, where they can buy the book.
We'll put the link in our show notes so our listeners can click on it and hopefully purchase a copy for themselves.
All right, great. And what's important to know, I think I should say this, is we are non-profit, so the book is being sold at cost. There's not a penny being made from the book because we don't have any more need for funds. Obviously, the project is done.
Well, it's been over 2 years now, and you had mentioned that the dome of the Lars Homestead is now kind of weathered and looks more like it did in the movie. Mm-hmm. How is the rest of the structure holding up? I know recently I saw some pictures of a rainstorm that had hit, and it looked like it had filled up with water. What's the current status of the Lars Homestead as we speak?
Well, I've been there in April with my family because my kids wanted to see it. They were like, Dad, you've been over there so many times without us. It's time to take your kids and show what, nice. What the fuss is all about. So I took them out there, and in April it was looking really good. It was still in prime condition, and it was actually the color was right. And even though the steps had filled up already with sand again, and recently, like you come to say, Jason, there was this rainstorm. The rain is already gone, and the structure there has been no structural damage. Let me put it that way. The rain it rains on and off in Tunisia, even though people would think otherwise, being a desert. But often it rains, and when it does, it really rains, you know. But 2 days later, all the water is gone. So there has been no structural damage. The only damage that we've experienced and that we've had to go back to restore is the fact that we had cast in resin a lookalike of the entry coder, you know, the little buttons on the right side of the door. We had made a copy of that and put it in there as well. And apparently, within 6 months, someone had gone out there to go and steal it. And actually, that was we were really saddened. We couldn't understand why. I mean, it was well known that this was a copy. This is a restoration. This is not the original from the movie. So why would anybody want to steal that? Now, luckily, we had copies made ourselves, and so in March, one of the guys from the original group went out there to replace it. When I went out there in April, it was still there. So fingers crossed. But it's in good shape. We are getting mails and pictures from people going out there almost monthly, showing us pictures of themselves at the homestead, and we're really happy with the way it's holding up, because the desert really is unforgiving. But it's holding up better than we had feared.
Do you and the other pioneers, do you guys feel a responsibility towards the homestead that your group has to keep going back and keep it up to date, keep it in prime condition? Or do you think that, all right, we've done our work and it's time for someone else to take over? Next time, 20 years from now, another group of guys is going to have to go out and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. We've done our job. We've fulfilled our destiny to go out there and restore the homestead. We promised we'd do that, and we did. But now we would like to encourage other people to take up the mantle, and if some repairs are needed, just do it. I've had a guy out there was it February? I think it was February, and he contacted me through Skype while he was still in Tunisia, and he said, "It looks like this could use some paint. There is this spot that is, it needs some paint. What do you think?" And I was like, "Go for it. If you're there and you see the spot and you're able and willing to make repairs, go for it." And he did, and it looked great. When I got out there in February, in April of this year, I saw what he did, and I was like, "Yep, this is how it should be. If there's damage here, and fans are here, and they see damage, and they feel that they can fix it, go for it. Bless you. Yeah, please do."
That's great.
Because we really want the Star Wars, the Lars Homestead. We want it to be there for decades. But we do not want to fly out there every 2-3 years.
You're right. Has there been talk of repairing, like, for example, the Tech Dome at the at the Lars Homestead, or recreating the evaporators, anything like that, or maybe even salvaging some of the other sets in Tunisia? Have you guys talked about that, or again hoping someone else will take over?
I don't want to sound disrespectful, but once you've done this project in Tunisia, knowing what it took 2 years of planning. It took a week of really heartbreaking work. It's not something I would like to do again, to be completely honest, because it's really, even though it is immensely rewarding, and you have, of course, the bragging rights, but it's not something to do lightly. The Tech Dome, we talked about it, but decided not to do it because the Tech Dome had been ravaged by the locals. It's a wooden structure. The roof is actually made of plywood, painted plywood, and the locals would simply steal it for their fires, to heat their homes, or even to make chicken coops, stuff like that. They would not leave it alone. So we felt it's no use to restore that Tech Dome. Same thing with the evaporators. They would not survive. There is this other set, the Mos Espa set, which is currently being restored, actually.
Yes, I've read about that.
Yes, after we finished our project, other people were asking us, how about the Mos Espa set? Because that one is suffering too, and yes, it is. But again, we were like, we've done what we did. We are happy to share our contact details with the government so you can do it yourselves. And the government also realized after our project that they were getting more and new tourists to the country. So they realized that the Lars Homestead is drawing a new crowd. The Mos Espa has the potential to draw even more people because, of course, the Mos Espa set is a lot bigger. While the Lars Homestead is just one small structure in the middle of nowhere, the Mos Espa set is almost like a small village. It's like 3 streets and 2 squares. If you're standing there, you're really in Mos Espa. You're really in the Star Words saga. So they worked together with a group of fans. I don't know them personally. SaveMosEspa.org is their website, and they are actually work is already underway. We could see that when I was there in April with my family. There were already bulldozers taking away the sand, because the biggest threat to the Mos Espa set is the Dune Sea that is actually moving towards the set, and it's already destroyed 2 of the structures. So to be honest, they started a little late, but nevertheless, again, no slight. They are now removing the sand. They are moving the dune, let me put it that way, so that they can restore the Mos Espa set as well.
Now, you said, dealing with the Tatooine locations, I know a lot of people who have gone to Tunisia have brought back pieces of the Krayt Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that still a viable location? Are there still pieces of the Krayt Dragon there? Tell us a little bit about that location.
No, those pieces are long gone. I own a piece myself, actually, but as soon as the locals found out that the pieces were buried there, they dug them up and they sold them very early on. If you still go out there to the Dune Sea, they will come up to you holding plastic bags, supposedly with Krayt Dragon bones, for which they ask next to nothing. But it's all gone, so don't be fooled. There's nothing left.
You said that when you guys took apart the Lars Homestead, you took pieces of it and were able to give them to some of the people who donated money to the refurbishing of the Lars Homestead. Are there any other pieces of sets that you've acquired through your travels to Tunisia?
A couple. All of them from Tunisia. For example, I have some window dressing. So they cast some rubber. How do you put this? To put around the doors and stuff like that. I have a couple of those. I have a couple of parts from the Mosespa set. Now you have to realize that was one of the rules to go on this trip with me was you cannot take anything with you that has not yet been that is not yet refused. That is not yet abandoned. So you can't break anything off. But if some part is on the floor and it's been discarded already, it's been destroyed, then you can take it home. That's the only parts that I took with me. I never took anything from a set that was still attached, let me put it that way. But I have some parts from the Mosespa set. I have some parts from the Sididris Hotel, which is the Lars Homestead interior, which is actually about 250 kilometers west of the Lars Homestead exterior, the dome. Those two sets are really far apart. They are brought together by movie magic. I have a couple of items from that set as well, and a piece of Crate Dragon bone.
All right. You said also you've been to the Finse, Norway location from Empire Strikes Back. Tell us, if you can, just in a short amount of time, a little bit about that location, what's there, and if is there anything left from the filming in that location? I know there's the large hotels there, but I know it's on a glacier, and you can tell us more about it.
And basically, that's all there is. Tunisia is interesting because you can fill 8 days with 8 different locations, while going to Finse is there's just one location, but it is so stunning. It's the glacier, which is about 16 square miles of snow and rock, and you have to have these ski motors, or I don't know how you call them, to drive up there to find them. But it is such a stunning scenery. But there's nothing left there because it is a nature reserve, and Lucasfilm had to take everything out before they when they stopped filming and they left the scene. They had to take everything out again as well. So the turrets and stuff like that, they're all gone. But there is nothing there besides the glacier. So people have to realize that, because when you go to Finse, it's on a railway between Oslo and Bergen. And they call it the roof of Norway for a reason. It's 1,222 kilometers of height. There's no cars there. So when you go there, the only thing you can take to get there is the train, and the train comes by twice a day, and that's it. So once you're there, you're stuck. When we were there, and this was in March, if memory serve, it was dreadfully cold. It was freezing every day, but you can dress. You can put on sweaters and whatever. It's not a problem. But the weather could change there 4 times a day. It could start with a blue open sky, and it could end with a blizzard where you couldn't see a hand in front of you. But that's the charm of that location. It is not to be underestimated. That location is even more dangerous, if dangerous is a good word, is more dangerous than Tunisia. You can really get lost on the glacier. There's paths that is marked with poles, and you cannot deviate from the poles. You cannot deviate from the path, because you might end up falling through the snow into crevices and never be found again. And it happens every year. So, yeah, but well worth it. If you stay in the path, nothing will happen. But it is such a beautiful scenery. But I also have to tell you this: it is very expensive. Finse was, and this is in Norway, a bottle of wine at the hotel is costing you an arm and a leg. A simple Coke or a beer will set you back $15. So that was, I can go to Tunisia 4 times, 4 weeks, as opposed to 1 week to Finse in Norway, money-wise.
Is the expense due to its location, or I've just always heard most of the Scandinavian countries were expensive? Exactly, that's what it is. Oh, okay. It's not the remoteness. Getting there is a bit of a trick as well. You have to fly into, Oslo or Bergen, whichever airport you like, and then you have a 4-hour train ride ahead of you. And at the top of that
because it goes over a mountain actually from Oslo to Bergen, and at the top, the stop in the middle of that railroad is Finse, and there's nothing there. It's like 5 houses and a church and a hotel and a motel, and that's it.
Now, you said you've been also to the locations in Italy from Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little overview of those locations.
Well, that is a good one to do with family, because Italy is a beautiful country to go and visit. It's very tourist friendly, and of course you're in a civilized place. So there's lots to do and lots to see, even for the kids, to take them swimming and stuff. But apart from that, the Lake Como is so beautiful, especially if you go in spring with all the flowers. But then you can also visit the Villa del Balbianello, which was used in episode 2 as the family home of Padme Amidala. It's where Anakin and Padme get married. So that is a beautiful location. You can spend a whole day there, and you can see it from the lake. You can rent a boat. You don't need a boating license or anything. There's boats there that you can rent to sail around it and stuff like that. It's quite beautiful, in fact. Again, just one location, but heavily used.
Now, have you ever been to any of the filming locations here in the States?
I've been to Death Valley, but I'd really like to get back there. I've also been to the Red Forest. But that was years ago. That was the early 90s. I wasn't even out there to visit the locations. I was just out there on a holiday, remembering, and this is where they shot Star Wars. So it was more or less the other way around. But I was very much impressed with Death Valley. I'd really like to go back there and show it to my children.
Well, actually, let's talk about Episode 7 real quick. We've already heard that they've shot in Abu Dhabi and also in right outside of London. There's and also in Ireland. Any plans? Any future plans once we find out a little bit more concrete of where they've shot of going out there and visiting those?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always wanted to visit Ireland, so this might make a good excuse. I know the location in Ireland that they've shot. It's a bit of a on the coast dotted with some rocky islands. It's really a nice location, a bit out of the way, but if you go and visit Ireland, why the hell not? And for me, that is really close. It's just a 2-hour flight away, so I will definitely be visiting that. Yeah.
And this, I guess, my final question is: tell us about your excitement of Episode 7, and what do you think about it?
Well, I have to be honest. I try to stay away from it for the time being. I'm one of those people who prefers to go and watch the movie spoiler-free. So I don't really know a lot about what's going on with Episode 7. There's sometimes things that pass on Facebook, but I try not to look at them. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be really good. People have been telling me, it's going to be Mickey Mouse with a lightsaber. Of course, that is not going to be the case, obviously. I think J.J. Abrams is a very skilled director. So I think this is going to be a very exciting film, and I think it's going to be a lot better than the prequels. So it's something to look forward to. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm counting down to December next year. But other than that, I haven't heard much about it, and I've tried to avoid hearing about it. So please, don't tell me anything.
I've been trying to stay spoiler-free myself, but Jason here is ruining it for me. He keeps telling me things. He's telling me too much.
That's part of the fun that I've enjoyed with Star Wars is the speculation and finding out little tidbits that kind of helps bridge the time in between movies and whatnot. So that's part of the Star Wars I love. But yeah, so you may want to stay away from our Facebook page, Mark, because we sometimes dabble a little bit. Tim doesn't like to, but I'm slowly turning him over to the dark side of spoilers. So.
Poor Tim.
It's rumors right now. When we get to real spoilers, I will stay away. But the rumors and speculation, I've sort of been dragged into that.
The only thing I'm worried about in Episode 7 is how Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher are going to fit in. I can see Mark Hamill with a beard becoming an Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of type. That would be nice, I think. And I know Mark personally, and I think he would do a good job. But Carrie Fisher, she needs to get in shape. When I met her last year, in July in Germany, no offense, but after all, she's a grandmother now. I mean, she's plump, but she's still very, very, very funny. She makes me laugh out loud a lot. But if they're going to put her she's not bikini fit, let me put it that way. But they'll probably dress her up like a senator or whatever, head of state, something like that. But I am a bit worried about what is their part going to be, because I presume it's going to be small and going to be like building a bridge between the last generation and the new generation. But I hope it's not going to be just a cameo or a gimmick. I hope they will have a part that contributes to the story.
I think they will. I think that having J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan there as the writers, with Kasdan's history with Star Wars and then J.J. being a huge fan, I think they maybe have their finger on the pulse of Star Wars fandom and will probably make the right decisions. Hopefully, we can only hope.
There's also Kathleen Kennedy, the producer, and she really, really knows what Star Wars means to the fans. So she's definitely not going to screw that up.
All right. So one last question, because I keep on thinking of more questions to ask you, and I'm having such a fun time talking about Star Wars, is probably like us, you thought Star Wars was over probably after the Revenge of the Sith. What was your thoughts when you heard, A, Disney was buying Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and B, that there was going to be more Star Wars movies?
Well, I have to be honest, when they announced the return of Star Wars with Episode 1, I was already a bit... they don't have to do this for me. And I turned out to be right because, well, the prequels were just not that good for me. Probably because I was already old and gray by the time they came out, while I was a 7-year-old kid when I saw the original Star Wars. So maybe that has a lot to do with it. But when I heard that then it was sold to Disney, I was kind of, I was not too happy with that. I would have hoped that George Lucas would have taken Star Wars to the grave with him. And bless him, he can get to be 100. I don't mean for him to die, but I was kind of hoping he would keep it with him and that Star Wars would end with him, and that it wouldn't go on to Disney. And then they announced all these movies that are coming out. My first reaction was indeed a negative one, but by now, having talked to Kathleen Kennedy or having heard her speak at a convention in Germany and all the other people who are involved with the new films, I think it's going to be rather exciting and even better than, like I said, like the prequels. So by now, I'm really looking forward to it. What I am a bit worried about is a spin-off of Yoda, for example. I'm not sure that's going to be interesting enough to fill a whole movie. But then again, I might be wrong, because I am looking forward to a spin-off film about Han Solo, for example, because I find that to be a very interesting character. So I'm not sure. We'll see what comes, and I am sure that it will look great. It will look great. But I also hope that the storylines will be interesting enough to keep me captivated.
Great. I think we're all in the same boat. We're kind of keeping our fingers crossed, hoping for the best. And, I think that, like you said, the prequels left us all with a little bit of a bad taste in our mouth. And, that we can only kind of go positive and up from there.
One of the biggest pluses of the new movies is the fact that we can keep Star Wars alive in our household, so that I can actually, it's like giving well, not the torch. Let me put it like this: like giving the lightsaber to my son, so he can become the fan that I used to be. And then in a few years, he can say, "I'm a Jedi, like my father before me."
Nice, very nice.
Mark, it's been really interesting hearing about this stuff. I know personally, I have always wanted to go to Tunisia, and I was able to never been able to go myself, but master collector Gus Lopez went many years ago and had a little video presentation at a con I went to, and so I've always been interested in seeing all the different locations. And on behalf of all the Star Wars fans of the world, we'd like to thank you for preserving not only cinematic history, being a movie fan, but also preserving part of our childhood that maybe we can share with our children one day.
Well, allow me to right back at the fans. I mean, if it weren't for the fans, we would not have been able to do this. It's thanks to the support, not only financial, but also the moral support of the fans, that we were actually able to go out there and restore the Lars Homestead. So thank you, Star Wars fans.
Great. Yeah, we appreciate it. Now, Mark, we've talked about your project. Now's the time on the show where we want to talk about you. We want to get to know you a little bit better as a Star Wars fan.
All right.
It's a segment we call the Mind Probe. Are you ready for the Mind Probe?
Her resistance to the mind probe is considerable. It'll be some time before we can extract any information from her.
All right, bring it on.
Okay.
All right, yeah, these are real, just kind of about your fandom and your love for Star Wars. So you always have to ask a Star Wars fan, what is your favorite Star Wars film and why?
That has to be The Empire Strikes Back, because I really love the dark, almost Oedipuscian storyline. You know, it's also the first film in which Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker actually clash. So the scene, "No, Luke, I am your father," I use that at home quite a lot. I think The Empire Strikes Back has to be my favorite. The at-ats at the Echo Base, the Battle of Hoth. It still gives me the goosebumps, you know. It has to be The Empire Strikes Back, probably because it is the darkest of the trilogy. I really like that storyline.
Yes, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, what is your favorite Star Wars character and why?
I think Obi-Wan Kenobi. In the prequels, he's a bit like I was when I was a kid, you know, a bit country, you know. But I also like the older Obi-Wan, who is very wise and who teaches. You know, I kind of like Obi-Wan. I think I could be Obi-Wan. You know, most people in my family, they say, "Oh, you should be Luke Skywalker or even Darth Vader." Or no, Obi-Wan's fine.
All right, tell us about some of your own personal areas of Star Wars fandom. You know, we know that you've gone to the different locations. Now, are you a collector? Do you like reading the books? Are you into cosplay? What's another part of your Star Wars fandom that we haven't covered yet?
Well, you may not know this, but JediMaster.be will tell you a lot, which is my autograph collection. I've been collecting Star Wars autographs since 1992, and I have about 6,000 of them.
6,000?
Yes. Well, 6,000 autographs, not about 1,000 different people. Yeah.
Okay.
But I used to visit. I visit the celebrations. I visit the Jedi cons in Europe and stuff like that. So I have met with about 100 Star Wars actors in person. That's one of the highlights of my collection, my autographs. I currently own the household record on the Star Wars pinball machine in the basement. My kids are trying to beat me, but they cannot. But don't tell them, but I took off the glass plate and I cheated one night to create a record that they would not be able to break. So I have a Star Wars pinball machine as well. I am a bit of a collector, yes, and I do like to read the books. I buy the books, all of them. I have about 400 books in different languages. This is another one of my collecting habits. Whenever I travel abroad, and I travel a lot, I try to bring a Star Wars book in the local language, even though I can't read them all, of course. But I have Star Wars books in Spanish, Portuguese, Hungarian, Russian, Korean, you name it. I like the Polish versions. They have these very different covers. But anyway, so collecting books is one thing. Collecting autographs is another. I also collect the toys, the new ones. I haven't got much vintage left, I have to admit. But I did collect I do collect the new action figures. So yeah, I'm a bit of a collector. And I've got the 3 costumes. Even though I'm not into costuming per se, I do have an Obi-Wan Kenobi costume, a Stormtrooper, and a Darth Vader costume.
Nice.
Whenever we do these events, you know, we often do an event in Belgium as well called Facts. I sometimes dress up for that occasion, yeah. Even though I'm not into cosplay or anything like that.
Jason and I both have Stormtrooper costumes ourselves, so we know how much fun they can be.
Exactly.
Our next question, and I feel like you may have already answered this, we like to ask, what is your Star Wars dirty little secret? And by this we mean some story related to Star Wars that you really haven't shared,
And I think maybe cheating in Star Wars pinball might be your dirty little secret.
Oh, I have a little secret that's a lot dirtier. And
Okay, go for it.
And I've only shared it with my wife, and I had to sleep on the couch that night. I went to London for a Carrie Fisher signing. So Princess Leia was signing in the Jury Hotel in London. It was just her. We were standing in line for 6 hours before we actually got to meet her. I was there with a friend. And when it was our turn, I told her, whenever I was a kid, I always had a crush on Princess Leia. And when I was a kid, I thought I was going to marry her, and I'm still very much in love with you. And it was more of like a joke, and I presume she hears that all the time. But she just got up, and she took my head in her hands, and she drew me to her, and she gave me such a wet kiss on my mouth. I was like, I was really stunned, and I was like, I just kissed Princess Leia. And I mean, it was a good kiss. It was not the kind of kiss you would give a Wookiee, but it was a good kiss. And when I came home and told my wife, she had me sleep on the couch one night. But it was all in good spirits. It was a bit of a joke. But that was fun.
That's great. Not many guys can lay that claim. That's awesome.
I guess now do you watch those scenes of her in the metal bikini and have a little fantasy in your head like I've kissed that?
No, Jason, no. Oh, you have a dirty mind. I do have an inflatable. No. Let's not go there.
Okay. Here's the last question. It's probably the hardest of them all.
Really?
So, yes. Jar Jar, love him or hate him?
My wife loves him. Is that enough for? No, I hate him. Sorry, I hate him.
Okay.
I loathe him. Yeah. If I could kill him, I think I would. It's just not. No, it's that's one of the big differences between the prequels and the original trilogy. The original trilogy had this, in my opinion, intelligent humor, with Han Solo being smug and stuff like that. It was, in my opinion, that was intelligent humor, while Jar Jar more or less feels like slapstick, and I'm really not into slapstick. So I guess that's why I don't really like him much. People often ask me also, Ewoks, do you like him or not? And I have to say, I have no problem with Ewoks. But Jar Jar, I probably put him on the barbecue.
Yeah. In my mind, Ewoks serve a purpose. It helps the story. Jar Jar, I don't see a purpose. I don't see a need. Anyway, that's my take.
Okay, Mark, you survived the mind probe. And now, are you ready to do the trench run?
The trench run.
This is Red 5. I'm going in.
That is the part of our show that it's kind of a guest game time when we're going to ask you some questions.
Uh-huh.
And since you've visited Tatooine so many times, we thought we'd quiz you on everyone's favorite planet that's farthest from the bright center of the universe.
All right.
And since you said you've read the books and you're a big Star Wars fan, maybe you know some of this, maybe you don't. Maybe we'll educate you a little bit in Tatooine, so next time you go there, you'll know a little bit about your home away from home.
All right. All right.
The first question deals with the twin suns of Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
There are Tatooine is orbited by two suns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what their names are? Here, I'll give you a multiple choice.
No, they're Tattoo 1 and Tattoo 2.
Well, there you go. I was going to say, is it either Shinini or
Shinini? That sounds like a drink.
Actually, the multiple choice was A, Shinini or Gersma. Those are actually the two of the moons of Tatooine.
Really?
Tattoo 1, Tattoo 2, or I was going to give you the option of Sunny and Cher as the suns.
All right. Here we go. Question number 2. 32 years before the Battle of Yavin, Jango Fett came to Tatooine and he disposed of Gardulla the Hutt and subsequently her empire. Who hired Jango to take out Gardulla? Was it Jabba the Hutt, Zero the Hutt, or Pizza the Hutt?
Tough one. I'll go with B, Zero the Hutt.
Zero the Hutt. Jason, is that correct?
Oh, that's right. I hold the answers to
yes.
these. I forgot. It is Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt.
Should have known.
All right.
The big slime.
Yes. It wasn't Pizza the Hutt.
No,
we're sure of that.
No.
That's from Spaceballs.
Exactly.
Okay, the bartender of the Mos Eisley Cantina is a lady named Akmina, as we saw in the holiday special. She sang a song each night at closing time to tell the customers that it was time to leave before the Imperial curfew started. What was the name of the song she sang? Was it A, Good Night, but not Goodbye? Is it B, Raise a Glass to the Jedi? Or was it C, 100 bottles of blue milk on the wall?
I haven't a clue. Let's say C, 100 bottles of blue milk on the wall.
Oh, that's what I would have chosen, but unfortunately, she would have not have finished it before the Imperial curfew. It is A, Good Night, but not Goodbye, and you can see that on the glorious holiday special. What's your thoughts on the holiday special, Mark? Do you love the holiday special?
I've only seen it once, and that was actually yeah, exactly. And that was when it aired on Christmas evening. I was at my grandparents' house, and I was like, "This is Star Wars." And I just left the dinner table to go and watch this. And halfway through, I went back to the dinner table thinking this is some kind of a rip-off. And a bad one at that. And I've never looked back.
Good man, good man.
Oh, horrible.
All right, question number 4. Mos Eisley is built around the crash site of a crashed spaceship. What is the name of that ship? Is it A, the Rand Ecliptic, B, the Dowager Queen, or C, Queen Amidala's starship, excuse me.
Tough one. I think it's the Rand Ecliptic.
Oh no, sorry, that's wrong. The Rand Ecliptic. It was B, yes, the Dowager Queen. The Rand Ecliptic was the ship that Biggs Darklighter was on when he left the Imperial Navy and escaped to join the rebellion.
All right.
That was a tricky one. Okay, here we go. This one's a little bit easier. Jabba's palace was originally built as what? Is it A, Barbon monk monastery, B, a Corellian mining center, or C, a Rancor petting zoo?
I like C, but it's A monastery.
Yes, it is the Bomar monk monastery. You are correct.
All right. So, speaking of Jabba, Max Rebo's band played at Jabba's palace. Max Rebo and the band, that was not the band's original name. Was the original name going to be Evar Ordus and his Galactic Jizz Whalers, Odie Max Psy and the Double Sunset Sky, or the last choice, the Free Banthas?
It's A, I think.
You are correct, sir. You know your intergalactic music.
Coming up, number 7. Which of the following was not a hit by Max Rebo's band? A musical hit. Is it A, That Joyous Night I Ate My Mate, B, My Heart Belongs to You, or C, I Like Big Huts and I Cannot Lie?
Where do you guys get these questions? I'll go for My Heart Belongs to You.
No, that's actually from the movie Titanic. It is A, That Joyous Night I Ate My Mate. Believe it or not.
Lovely. Okay, question 8. Not many people survive being fed to the Sarlacc, but a few have. Who from this list has not survived being eaten by the Sarlacc? Was it A, Zorba the Hutt, B, Starkiller, or C, Barada?
Barada.
That is correct.
Yes, he's one of the first guys to fall into the pit and
never comes out.
He was an hors d'oeuvre, an appetizer.
Yes. Yes, Zorba the Hutt was actually, I think the Sarlacc actually regurgitated Zorba the Hutt, and then Starkiller uses force powers or something to get out of there. Anyway, 2 more. Cantina bartender Wur obtained whose corpse and brewed it into a beverage for Jabba's consumption? Is it A, Ponda Baba, B, Dr. Evazan, or C, Greedo?
I haven't a clue. Oh, let's make it Greedo.
You are correct, sir.
Yes.
And I bet that was a tasty, tasty brew.
All right, so last question here. The Mos Eisley Cantina. And you've been there, right? The actual cantina. Can you go inside? Is there anything? Or
Yes,
is it just...
you can. It's actually a bakery, or it used to be a bakery. So the inside is just tiles and ovens. There's not much to see nowadays. And the building is still there, but all the surrounding buildings have been renewed. There's all these big apartment buildings, and they probably want to put one there as well. But the old baker, he's about a few years shy of dying, I think, he doesn't want to sell. So he's one of those, like in the movie Up, he doesn't want to sell, and he just wants to hang on to this little building, and it's being overrun, and it's in a very decrepit state, but it's still there, and it used to be a bakery, but there's not much to see there.
Well, hopefully if the government realizes what they have, you mentioned the tourist office is starting to realize the importance of these locations. Hopefully they'll protect that. I'd hate to see that go away. Anyway, back to our question. The Mos Eisley Cantina is actually better known to the locals by what name? Is it Chalmers Cantina, Nal Hutta, or Akamina's Place?
Chalmers Cantina.
That's correct. Chalmers being the Wookiee owner of the cantina. Exactly. Yeah. Well, Mark, you survived the trench run. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And thank you very much once again for coming on the show. You want to tell people once again where they can find you online?
Oh, well, they can... the most important site, of course, is savelars.com, which details the project that we did 2 years ago, and where they also can find the book. But my personal Star Wars website is jedimaster.be, BE for Belgium, and there they can find my autograph collection. And, of course, I can be found on Facebook as well.
We'll put links in our show notes for everybody to follow.
All right. Thank you.
Best of luck in your future endeavors. Are you planning any trips to Tunisia anytime soon?
Well, I've just returned from Tunisia last April, so that's a bit on the back burner. What we're going to do now is rebuild the home so that we can find a new place for the pinball machine and stuff like that. So Star Wars, the next big Star Wars thing is probably going to be seeing the new movie with the whole family. But no Star Wars trips in the meantime. It's time to work a bit in the house.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I have to do the same thing myself.
Yeah. It's the dark side. No, it's what do they call it? Dark side, wife. Wife, that's what they call it. It's the wife.
They say happy wife, happy life. So
well, guys, it's been tremendous fun being on the Fandomverse podcast. Thanks a lot for inviting me. And good luck with your show.
Oh no, the Rancor!
All right. Thank you to Mark for coming on the show and telling us all about his Tunisian adventures. And thank you once again, Mark, for saving a piece of our history. I have not been to Tunisia, but I appreciate the work he's done and hope someday to see it in person myself.
It makes me want to start saving some money right now to go to Tunisia. I tell you,
yeah.
Every time I hear about those locations and see them, it makes me want to go. But I'm a redheaded, light-skinned fellow, and I don't know if I can stand the sun.
Yeah, they have lotions and special clothing you can wear.
Yeah, hats.
Yes.
I need lots of hats.
You could get a sand person costume and wear that. That'll be appropriate. So thanks again to Mark. And coming up next, we have Mr. Dan White, who's going to chew the power cables. Now, last week on the show, I mentioned, Jason, how I got to meet Dan in person, went down to Providence and went out for a beer with Dan. It was a good evening out on the town. I forgot to mention something about my story with Dan.
Okay, what jail did you guys end up in?
No. This is just a warning to people like myself who maybe depend too much on modern technology. I was at a 501st event at a local hotel, and I said, "Hey Dan, send me your address, and we'll meet up afterwards. I'll come pick you up." And he sent me his address. He said, "Oh, so you're not far away." I'm like, "Great." He sends me his address. I push it into the GPS machine, and it says 13 minutes away. In my mind, 13 minutes isn't that far, but Dan's like, "Really? 13 minutes? Okay." His address wasn't 13 minutes away. his address, I'm not going to say it here for the sake of privacy. Let's just say he lives on
Elm Street.
Elm Street. Yes, thank you. I typed in Elm Avenue, which was 13 minutes away. Turns out he was actually 2 minutes away. So I get to Elm Avenue, and I'm like outside the address. I'm like, here, I'm at number 24, where you said you live. Where are you? He's like, I'm out front on the sidewalk. I'm like, I don't see you. And then I'm like, I'm flashing my lights, and he's like, I'm waving my arm. Do you see me? I'm like, no. And then I take a second look at the map and the GPS and figure out the mistake I made. And so drove the 13 minutes back to the hotel, which was literally around the corner from his address. I could have walked there and nothing, and picked him up, and we went out and on the town, had a good time. So
Tim, you know better than to trust a strange computer.
Exactly. So folks, we live in a time of wonders and amazement, but be careful. The little details still make a difference. And on that note, here we go, Mr. Dan White chewing the power cables.
Watch out! It's all right. Yeah, what I thought. Minoc. Chewie, check the rest of the ship. Make sure there are no more attached. Chewing on the power cables.
Minox.
Go on inside. We'll clean them off if there are any more.
Thanks to some rogue pilots and a man in a tree, we've seen extras in costume, our first look at a black X-Wing, and our second look at half the Millennium Falcon, all of which will make great toys. That being said, for the expanded Fandomverse, I'm Dan White, chewing on the power cables. It's a costly time to be a Star Wars fan, as new rounds of licensed products are hitting shelves, gearing up for what looks like a very good holiday shopping season. Rebels-related toys, t-shirts, and back-to-school items are all stocked up and ready to entice fans and hypnotize fanatics. And to prepare a new generation of fans into thinking their parents are cool, new original trilogy merchandise is being produced and reproduced at an increasing rate. Merchandising is intrinsically tied to the success of Star Wars. If it weren't for all those lunchboxes, bed sheets, t-shirts, and toys, there really is no telling if it would have lasted as long as it has. In 1973, George Lucas turned down $500,000 in directorial fees from 20th Century Fox Studios to retain sole ownership of any future sequels and rights to all merchandising. That means any related sellable item to be produced would be money in his pocket. At the time, film studios had hit a dead end with merchandising, and it wasn't considered an important revenue stream. Well, a quick stroll through any department store can tell you times have certainly changed, and George knew he could turn that change into dollars. Between 1977 and 1978, Star Wars sold $100 million worth of toys, and much of that went directly into George's bank account, which he used to build one of the most impressive media empires the world has ever seen. It gave him the ability to work totally outside of the Hollywood system and make essentially independent films. He wanted to answer to nobody, and now he had the money to do it. But enough with the boring stuff. After all, merchandising is only a byproduct of creativity, and can only survive if there's a real market for it. Hasbro wouldn't be churning out millions of tiny little plastic people if there weren't kids that wanted to play with them, or weird middle-aged people to hoard them. The reason people want Star Wars stuff is because they love Star Wars. In 1977, kids loved Star Wars so much that they were willing to settle for an empty box at Christmas with an IOU from Kenner. Well, their patience paid off, and with the exception of a small dormant period in the 1990s, there's been a steady stream of memorabilia ever since. And remember, this is all tied back to the deal Lucas made with Fox. If he wanted to make new movies and to be able to fund them himself, he'd need to raise that money by himself by selling stuff with the Star Wars logo. Think of it like a Kickstarter campaign. If you're buying a piece of merchandise with the promise that it will fund a future film. It's no accident that Power of the Force action figures hit the shelves in 1995 and The Phantom Menace went into production in 1997. Not only did it generate buzz for the franchise, it garnered actual, tangible revenue for the studio to proceed. Now all this has changed. Lucas has sold off the studio and wants to spend time napping on piles and piles of cash, and who can blame him? He worked hard, made good decisions, and made billions of people very, very happy. Now Disney owns the whole kit and caboodle, and whether they can make some quality stuff for me to waste my money on is anyone's guess. By way of full disclosure, I am not unbiased in today's topic. Fact is, I own hundreds of Star Wars things. Christmas ornaments, clothes, comic books, video games, toys, posters. All this takes up space in my apartment. Once I had a friend over, and she gently ribbed me about my obsession. I thought about it and decided the best way to answer was a demonstration. I told her to wait there, and I went into my bedroom and came out with the lightsaber. It's Luke's from Return of the Jedi, and it was given to me by a designer that works at Hasbro. Her eyes lit up as I handed it over. Its hilt is metal, and feeling the weight of it in your hand immediately tells you that it's not so much a toy as a work of art. She fiddles with a button, then jumps as the white beam ignites into a green glow. Not all at once, but in a smooth, graceful climb to the end. As she waves it, a sensor in the hilt responds to the motion, mimicking the sounds of atmospheric interaction, which is now so iconic, a sound of dormant power splitting the air. The sensor also responds to any pressure on the blade, letting out a crash. After chasing the cat and pretending to murder both invisible enemies and myself, this grown woman, with degrees in art history, psychology, and child development, asks if she can put on my Jedi bathrobe so she can take a selfie. Yes, it all goes back to money, and yes, it's really all just a bunch of garbage, but anything can spark imagination, wonder, and joy, if you are open to it. And that's why I collect.
That wraps up another exciting episode of the Expanded Fandomverse podcast. The Expanded Fandomverse, the only Star Wars podcast about you, the Star Wars fan. Well, Jason, another one's in the bucket.
In the bucket.
Phrase? In the bucket? In the bag.
We're stormtroopers, so it could be in the bucket. That's fine with me. I guess, does that mean a stormtrooper's bucket list is... I don't know. There's a joke in there somewhere.
Somewhere. Someone will find it. If you find it, let us know.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Call us.
So, Jason, you ready? I got a question for you.
Okay.
What did you learn this week? You didn't see that coming, did you?
This week, I learned that they don't serve beer in Tunisia, which means that I just probably can't go there. It's because, I mean, you know.
How do they make it through football season? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, seriously. Whew. I also learned that if someone walks up to you and tries to sell you some crate dragon bones, they probably also have some swampland in Florida that they want to sell you. So, you know, probably not a good investment.
Right.
Those crate dragon bones. And then I also learned that if you're flying around and you look out your window and you see half a Millennium Falcon and a black X-Wing fighter on the ground, that you're probably not intoxicated. That it actually could really happen.
Yes. I can't wait to see that on film. I'm the more and more that leaks out about Episode 7, the more my anticipation is building. It's going to be a really long year next year.
Oh, but it's gonna pay off in so many fun ways, especially when you see that first trailer.
Oh, my heart is palpitating just thinking about it.
Well, and you know what, Tim?
What's that?
Don't be surprised that, football season just started. The Super Bowl. I bet you'll see an Episode 7 commercial in the Super Bowl.
Oh,
mark my word right now.
All
it could
right.
happen.
Folks, lay your money down. Was Jason going to be right or wrong on this? I'm with him. I think it's going to happen.
And it'll be just enough to wet your whistle. And then and then they'll pop up the logo and say, "Sorry, you got to wait another, 11 months."
Right. Ugh. Okay, I can't even think about that right now. I can't deal. But you know what I can deal with? Jason's Jawa giveaway. Don't forget, folks. Yeah, don't forget. Until midnight, September 20th, 21st, go to iTunes, leave us a review. And if you do, your name will be put in the hat, and we'll draw your name. If you're the lucky winner, you'll win a Darth Goofy plush toy, and a large selection of children's Star Wars books.
How many of them?
18. Yes, 18. So, hey, these might not be something that you want for yourself, but these would make an awesome gift for the young Star Wars fan in your life. So, hey, go out and do it. Leave us a message on iTunes, and you could be the winner.
Or if you don't even have a young Star Wars fan in your life, dude, like Toys for Tots is coming up soon.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know what would be cool to give away? Instead of candy on Halloween, give away a Star Wars book.
There you go.
I know I don't have more than 10 or 15 kids come by my house, so give a Star Wars book away or something. That might be cool.
That's an awesome idea. Okay, so that wraps up this week. Next week, Jason, who's coming up next week? I forget.
Next week, we got Tom Burgess from igrewupstarwars.com. He's going to come in and sit with us. And if you haven't been to his site, you got to go there right away because it is fun stuff. It's all kind of vintage Star Wars goodness. And trust me, if you're our age and you grew up with Star Wars, you will love the site. That's all I got to say. Check it out. Yeah. And then we got a great interview with Tom, and he's a really fun guy. And I'm looking forward to playing that for all our listeners.
Yeah, if you're a child of the 70s or 80s, check out his site. It's more than just looking at old toys. It'll bring back some great memories. So igrewupstarwars.com. Check it out. And while you're online, check out all our social media sites. We're on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. We're everywhere. Look us up.
iTunes, Stitcher.
theexpandedfandomverse.com. You can send us email at theexpandedfandomverse@gmail.com. Or just pick up the phone, do it the old-fashioned way. Leave us a message at 205-383-3663. Again, that's 205-383-3663. Well, Jason, that's about it. Anything else?
I'm just looking forward to episode 7. Is it really that far away still?
475 days, approximately, I'm guessing. So,
wow, that's still a lot of sketches for poor Nick.
Yeah. In the meantime, don't forget...
Don't be a fandom menace.
For the expanded Fandomverse will be with you always.